to the second episode of Are You Ready for a Podcast, the official podcast of the Are You Ready for Some Football Fantasy Football League. We are excited to be back for week 2. The first episode seemed to do well, not only amongst you guys, but apparently amongst the rest of the 57 people who somehow watched that video. So I'm not sure what exactly they were doing watching a video about a random fantasy football league, but we got a lot of views. So that's good. So I'm joined again by my co-host, Joe. Joe, how's it going?
I'm just so glad to have football back.
Yes, it was a fun time on Sunday, sitting down, screaming at the television. We both picked up a win, so good week 1 for us. All right, so let's go ahead and start it off with a recap. So just to kind of let everyone know what we're going to do, we're going to recap all the games one by one. Then Joe and I are going to give our power rankings, and then we'll have our first ever special guest from the league for our little interview and a pick'em segment at the end. So a couple of notes. First of all, I put it in the group me, but we hit 150,000 total points as a league this week. So that's a sort of huge number that doesn't really mean anything, but we did pass that this week. And we also scored 1,372 points this week, which is the 4th most points ever scored in a week by the league, and the most in week 1, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously, but it's the most ever scored in week 1. So off to a high scoring start this season. And we're going to start there with Joe, who scored his most points he's ever scored in a matchup in his week 1 win over Austin by a huge margin, 162 to 84.88. So Joe got the win against Austin, moving him to 4-4 all time against Austin. Like I mentioned, it was Joe's most ever points. So the most he'd ever scored before that was 150.1, which was in 2018 against Hunter. And so it's only his second 150-point performance. It's also the 8th most points scored in league history. The second most week 1 points ever scored. Austin in 2019 scored more. And it snaps his 5-game regular season losing streak, which is the longest he's ever had in his team history. So Joe, break it down. What happened? How'd you get the win?
Yeah, it was a fun Sunday. And well, actually, it was a fun Thursday night to start the season. I got my high score of the week was Amari Cooper. Had a hell of a Sunday night. Then it kind of continued, or Thursday night continued on Sunday. I only had one. Well, outside of my defense, I only had one single-digit scorer. That was James Robinson. It's kind of my only concern on my roster right now. But yeah, I think overall for my team, we talked about last week that it's kind of high floor, low upside. Clearly, it's a little bit higher upside than I think both of us thought. But yeah, I'm happy with the performance. And my I paid more for David Montgomery, but in theory, my 2 best players coming into the year were AJ Brown and Justin Jefferson. They didn't even do a ton. AJ Brown caught a touchdown, and they were both in double digits, but they didn't they didn't play up to how they normally do. So getting that performance with those 2 guys playing like they did, I'm very encouraged. I would I wouldn't be totally discouraged if I was Austin. He just Najee and Clyde they got some work. They just didn't have the production. And then Tannehill, he was getting sacked all game and fumbling and all that. So he got a really good performance out of Antonio Brown on Thursday night, and then DeAndre Hopkins on Sunday. But I wouldn't be too concerned if I was him. Just kind of some subpar performances on Sunday.
Yeah, you definitely got out to a hot start, like you said, with Amari Cooper on Thursday. You actually at one point had 9 of the first, 35 touchdowns scored in the NFL season this year. So tons of touchdowns right from the beginning. Obviously, that worked out to a ton of fantasy points. But I think other reasons to be encouraged for you were that Jalen Hurts looked every bit legit as a top end QB1, which we had speculated about, but seeing it in person, even against a bad defense, is obviously encouraging. And then David Montgomery looked awesome against a good Rams defense. So I think a lot of reasons to be happy for you, obviously, with 160 points. And then for Austin, the running backs just didn't show up. Najee Harris and Clyde got work, but didn't really show up on the scoreboard. George Kittle didn't get in the end zone. Just not a lot going on. But if you're going to have a dud week, you'd rather it be again when the other team is going to score 162 points. So, at least Austin's not losing a nail biter this time. But yeah, big win for you for sure.
Yeah. The only thing I would add, I am encouraged by Hurts. I know you love Hurts. I like him a lot, but I don't think he has as much upside as you think he has. So I don't know if that was the Falcons or what. There, I am really concerned. I would say my biggest sign of encouragement was David Montgomery with against that run defense. Didn't have a good game script, doesn't have the best O line, and still put up a really good game. So that's probably what I'm most encouraged by from this week.
For sure. All right, so we're gonna move on to our next matchup. The next highest score was me. I scored 156.98 in a pretty big win over Colin, who had 105.6, so 50-point win. And a couple of notes from that game. It was my third highest score of all time, the 11th highest in league history, and the third highest total ever in week one, behind yours, which was second, obviously. And then I also went over 14,000 total points in that game and became the second team behind you to get 80 wins all time. It was also my third 150-point game, which ties Grant for the most all time. So a lot of numbers for me, which, there was a 21-point play in there. So I'll try to, if I can figure out how to do it, I'm putting a video of that play in the podcast right now. So just, maybe you're seeing it, maybe you're not, but if you're not, just imagine a majestic Patrick Mahomes to Tyreek Hill touchdown. Joe, what do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I think Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes, that stack it'll always keep you in games. It'll always make your opponent nervous that 21-point play is right around the corner. And you got what, 70, however many points from them, or 60, however many points from them this week. And
basically,
yeah, that's so that'll always be just a huge plus for your team. And having that performance and your highest paid player, and in theory what your best player Aaron Jones did nothing, that's got to be a little encouraging. Your streaming tight ends worked for a week. You lost Irv before the season, but you plugged Gronk in there. Gronk had 2 touchdowns on Thursday night, put up 25 points. And as far as Colin goes, I don't think his team had a horrible week. I don't think, kind of like Austin, I don't think it's a ton to be too discouraged by. I mean, I don't like Colin's team, but as far as performance, he put up 105 points. It was fine. He needs more from Eckler, but it was a tough matchup. Getting that performance from Hollywood on Monday night was actually, I think, pretty encouraging though. So, I would, I picked you against the spread. Didn't think you would mind that much, but it was a solid win by you.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Austin's team, I mean, the thing was his best guys did fine, not great. Maybe a little bit underwhelming between Taylor and Eckler, but he did have some of his receivers show up with Hollywood Brown and Michael Williams on his bench. So, and then he's also got decent running back depth with Kenyon Drake and James White, which is hard to come by. So I actually think there's some positives he could take out of the week, but obviously matchup was never close. So feels good to get a good win to start the season, even if my team is slowly falling apart onto the IR. But I'll take a win in week one. Let's move on to our third matchup, which will be Thomas versus Zach. Thomas got the win, looking good as Joe and I had predicted in our power rankings, 143 to 107. So a nice big margin for Thomas. It was his 30th 100-point game all time. So he is now the 12th team to score 30 100-point games. He was the only one who had not done it. That was a current league member. So he finally has that mark. And then it's also his second highest score all time. He did score 151.9 in week 3 of 2019 against me, of course, but his second highest score of all time. So definitely a good performance from Thomas. What do you see in this one, Joe?
Yeah, we talked about last week about how much we liked the starting lineup, and they came to play. I would say if I was Thomas, I would have been freaking out a little bit pre kickoff of the noon games whenever you see that DeAndre Swift report, and then it gets debunked, and then Jamal Williams starts. And but DeAndre Swift ended up getting a lot of work in the passing game, had a really good game. So he's got to be encouraged there. Jamar Chase with his huge game. That's got to be encouraging, because I think the thing that we were a little bit iffy on were his flexes with Jamar and Melvin Gordon. They each had long touchdowns, so that kind of propelled him to the win. As far as that goes, you go all in on those 3 running backs, and two of them don't really show up, and that's going to cost you. And Chubb had a good game, but Zeke really did not, and neither did Antonio Gibson. Herbert didn't have a good game either. I think the Jared Cook thing we kind of questioned a little bit. I think that is turning out to be smart. He got targeted a lot, and then the receivers outside Brandon Cooks actually Marvin Jones had a good game too. So I don't know. Like I still don't love Zach's team. I just don't know if I would have gone all in on those three guys. And I'm a little bit more concerned about Antonio Gibson without Ryan Fitzpatrick. So a little concerning for Zach, but he still did put up 107. So I guess that's a fairly decent performance. And you're not going to win a ton of games when your opponent's putting up 143.
Yeah. I mean, it's a solid performance for Zach. That'll win you some games. Obviously, when you spin what he did on running backs and then you come out and get hammered by the running backs in week one, that's a little bit disappointing. But those guys are going to win him some games. I think Brandon Cooks looking good is an encouraging sign. He's got to find some better depth. I still don't like his back end wide receivers. Hopefully, Will Fuller comes and helps him out. But yeah, I mean, we were both high on Thomas. I liked him a little more than you did because I thought those flex options were decent. And week one, they played well. So things are looking good for Thomas. He's still rostering some scrub tight ends on his bench. So that's an interesting move when you got Kyle Pitts. But good week for Thomas. Good for him to get off to a good start and prove that we're not just making stuff up in our power rankings.
Yeah. And I believe Will Fuller's suspension is ending. So
yeah, so he'll be
yeah,
back.
so that'll be that's really good for Zach. That'll help his receivers.
Yeah, and the next leading scorer outside of those big games, those three big scores was Grant, who picked up a close win, 118 to 112 over Dan. And it continues his 5-game winning streaks in the regular season. So that's his 5-game winning streak overall. So that's the longest active winning streak in the league, and it's Grant's third longest of all time. So he's had 2 longer win streaks, but he's got the longest one in the league going now. And for Dan, it was his 50th 100-point game. So he's the 6th team to score 150 different games. Joe, what did you see in this one? Close game.
Yeah, it was close. It was probably it was the closest matchup of the week, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so it was a good game. Came down to Monday night. Dan could have won had he gotten a Henry Ruggs, had Derek Carr throwing that ball to Henry Ruggs instead of Zay Jones.
I thought that was Henry Ruggs. When he caught the ball, I thought that was Henry Ruggs, and I thought that was
no, Henry Ruggs like 11 or something.
Yeah, but when I saw the little guy out in front,
that would have been a hell of a way to start the year. Yeah, so I think it's kind of encouraging for Dan, despite losing, how the performances he got from his receivers that we didn't like at all, but Chark caught a touchdown. Robbie Anderson only had 1 catch in the game, and it was a 57-yard touchdown. But hey, that's 12 points right there. Jarvis had a pretty good game. Ruggs had a long catch, and so I think his receivers were, I think, better than we gave him credit for. Kamara was Kamara, but Derrick Henry had a bad game. So you expect with you would expect Derrick Henry with better game script to have a better performances moving forward, which will be good for him, good for Dan. But yeah, I mean, the huge Debo game, I think that would be the most encouraging thing for Grant. It seems like that's kind of the Niners' number one receiver, like outside of Kittle. So I would be encouraged by that if I was Grant. I would be very concerned about Saquon. I don't like Saquon this year, and his other running back options are not very strong. So might have to look at the waiver wire or for trades and later in the season.
Yeah, I think I disagree with you a little bit on what you said about Dan's team. I don't think I'd really be too encouraged by this performance if I'm Dan. I think he's relying on Derrick Henry to shoulder the load along with Kamara, and Derrick Henry and that whole offense did not look good in week 1, and so I'd be concerned about that. And then his receivers, I mean, you had some touchdowns, but I think those are going to come and go. And then his bench just really hardly did anything. I mean, Latavius Murray is probably a usable piece, and I guess James Conner is too. But I'm not sure that I'm too encouraged by this performance if I'm Dan. When you're in a close game, you really want to win because
and when you put up 112.
Yeah, and when you put up 112, you want to win. So I think he actually had a decent performance and didn't get the win. And I think I'd be concerned about Henry. And then as far as Grant goes, I agree with you. I'm a little concerned about Saquon. I don't love Fournette, but I think Dak being back is huge for Grant. Travis Kelce's the same guy he always was. So we'll see. I mean, I think his running back depth, obviously Zach Moss, Sony Michel didn't even play, but Jamal Williams is maybe a usable guy. So I don't know. I kind of think I feel pretty meh on both of these teams, but for Dan, I would be more concerned for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. One more thing on Grant. I'm interested in monitoring Mike Evans. It's tough for teams to sustain three receivers, and Godwin and AB had big games, and then Gronk caught 2 touchdowns also. So, that's a lot of mouths to feed there. So if Mike Evans if he ends up getting shut out, that's another problem for Grant.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike Evans is going to have big games. I don't think he looked bad in the game. He just didn't have the targets go his way. So I'm not as concerned about that. But if he does end up getting, being the fourth option on that offense, then yes, that's obviously a huge red flag. Now we'll talk about Nick and Ben. So Nick got the win 110-83. Ben with the lowest points in the league. Barely. He only had a point less than Austin. But for Nick, he goes over 12,500 points in this game, so he's the sixth team to do that. And for Ben, he is now on a 9-game losing streak. So things did not finish the season well, and obviously starting off with the lowest point is not a good start to this season. He was previous to this 7-3 in week 1, so now he's 7-4. And overall, not a good performance by Ben. Joe, what did you think?
Yeah, Ben's team, kind of low upside. I think that's our concern outside of Waller, and then obviously that's an all-time bad performance by Aaron Rodgers. But even if Aaron Rodgers put up 25, he still would have lost. So I started Marquez Callaway over Deontay Johnson and even Devontae Smith. I'm gonna call that questionable a little bit. I'm interested to seeing what Ben was thinking there. As far as Nick goes, obviously he got, we recorded last week before, and the podcast came out last week before the Gus Edwards injury, and Nick has Tyson Williams. He had a good game before it looked like they took him out a little bit. So that's a huge plus for Nick's team, because we know how big of a concern running backs were, and maybe his only concern were those 2 running back spots, and so that would fill a huge hole. And honestly, with Nick's team, what I loved about it so much was kind of the upside of his receivers. His receivers didn't even play that well, like Diggs and Ridley and Allen Robinson, and he still put up 110. So I'm I'm only reinforced in my belief of him as maybe the best team in the league. I think it's not to give away power rankings. I think it's pretty close between me and him, but I still really like his team.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of meh performances, and he still gets a win. I will say for Ben, I mean, obviously, I'm not a tremendous fan of his team, but I do think that Carson and Gaskin both look really good. Aaron Rodgers is obviously not going to score 1 point a game for the rest of the season. Cooper Kupp looked awesome. Darren Waller looked awesome. So I think that and T. Higgins looked better than we thought. Deontay Johnson looked good. Devontae Smith looked good. I actually think Ben's lineup looks better to me after this week than I thought before. It's just that this week, Callaway in his lineup really hurt him, and then Mostert getting hurt really hurts him down the road. So I think, pros and cons for Ben. The Callaway and Aaron Rodgers performance, you're not going to win when you get that performance. But I think that there are some actually really positive things for the rest of the season. I think that Waller and Kupp particularly are looking really good for the rest of the year. So I think that I kind of come out thinking better of Ben, but then he also had a season-ending injury, and he also got hammered and scored the lowest amount of points. So it's hard to move him way up, but I do think that I feel a little bit better about him.
Yeah, I get that. And the Mostert injury, it hurts his running back depth a lot. He doesn't have another running back outside him, but he has really good flex stuff. He has a lot of good receivers on his bench. So
yeah.
Until bye weeks hit, or maybe if Carson or Gaskin get hurt, that would really screw him. But for now, he's okay.
Yeah. And then we'll talk about the last matchup of the day. which was Morgan and Hunter. Morgan got the win. This one was another one that we thought might come up close in Monday night, and it really didn't materialize. Morgan kind of, sealed the deal pretty well. Got the win 99-88 over Hunter. For Hunter, this snaps a 7-game regular season winning streak. So before this week, he had the longest active regular season winning streak in the league. And disappointing performance all around. Morgan's got to be happy to get the win with 99 points.
Yeah, it's a real classic me circa 2017 or 2019 win. But I think with Hunter, he just started the wrong receivers. Brandon Ayuk, really unlucky that they started him but kind of used him as a decoy because he wasn't 100%. Julio, even though Julio had good game script the whole game, it's just their line was so bad and he's still getting worked in. So I wouldn't be too discouraged if I was Hunter. He only put up 88 points, but he just started the wrong receivers. I actually think I didn't like his running backs when we talked about his team last week. I actually think Darrell Henderson looked really good on Sunday Night Football, I thought. And, Chase Edmonds got a decent amount of work. Still a little concerned about Mike Davis, but if you have 3 guys, like you have the best player or the best running back in the league, and then 2 solid guys behind him, I think that's good enough. And, we'll see if Odell can get back healthy, but he just starts the right receivers and he's fine. So I still really like Hunter's team. Morgan,
Trey Sermon, who was a scratch for this game, but maybe turns into a starter next week. So
yeah. I think Hunter's team's fine. Like you can, especially now in a 14-week season, 1 loss week 1 isn't going to kill you. More as far as Morgan goes, pretty concerning. I mean, not concerning, pretty encouraging. Joe Mixon performance. Josh Jacobs too, although he looked like he kept getting hurt on Monday night. And then Devontae had a subpar game. So did Terry McLaurin, but we'll see. Terry McLaurin with no Fitzpatrick, that could be a concern for him. Gets a goose egg from Mike Gesicki. So like you said, Morgan's got to be thrilled that all that happened and he still got to win. I still kind of feel. Yeah, I still kind of feel similarly about the 2 teams that I did coming into the matchup. I don't really think this changed a whole lot.
Yeah, that's fair. I think I maybe like Morgan's depth a little bit better. So that kind of made me feel better about Morgan. But I agree, not too much change in there. All right, so let's move on to our power rankings. This is once again taking way longer than we expected. So we apologize to the listeners, and we'll try to go quick. So maybe just maximum a sentence or 2 about each team. So we'll start at 12 and work our way up again. And I'll go first. So I got Ben at number 12. Same place I had him last week. Not moving him anywhere when you score the most points and lose. But I do think I move him a little bit closer to the rest of the league after this week. I wanted to move him up, but with the Mostert injury and the big loss, I had to leave him at 12.
Yeah, so I had Colin at 12 last week. I agree. I moved Ben to 12 for this week. I think the Mostert injury, Aaron Rodgers had just an absurd season last year, and he's obviously not going to have a 1-point performance, but I don't think he's going to have really the season he had last year, and it kind of seems like he's giving up on the Packers. And like outside of Waller, I mean, I think you like Kupp probably a little bit more than I do. He got wide ass open on his long touchdown. So I just don't really like his team that much. It's just so low upside. It's tough to see the 120 point weeks that he's going to get. So I have him at 12.
And then at number 11, I've got Austin drop in 2 places. So I had him at 9 last week. I put him at 11 this week. And I think that, second fewest points in the league, there are some concerns about the running backs. And if those running backs don't perform, his flex depth is really going to be an issue like you mentioned last week. And I think we kind of saw it. So he may make some moves on the waiver wire, but I've got him at number 11 for now.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Colin. It's pretty close between him and Austin. Spoiler alert, I have Austin at 10. I think Eckler and Jonathan Taylor didn't get actually a huge snap percentage. I know the Colts like to use and the Chargers like to use different backs, but I think they were both at less than 60% snap percentage. That'd be a little concerning. Hollywood, how many good weeks is he going to have? With typically that passing offense goes through Mark Andrews. I think Kenyon Drake slightly encouraging on his bench there, but I'm still a little uninspired by Collins' team, so I have him at 11, and then I guess I'll go to 10. I have Austin at 10. Um, just he'll get better weeks out of Najee and Clyde, but I still don't like his depth at all, and so.
Yeah, I got Collins 10. I think I like Collins' depth significantly better than Austin's, and I think that he's got that running back duo. I think the Taylor Eckler duo. I feel a little bit better about than the Najee Clyde duo. So I've got Colin one spot ahead of Austin, pretty close there. Like you said, I got Colin at 10, Austin at 11. At number 9, I've got Morgan. So I had him at 11 last week. I put him up 2 spots. A nice win or a nice performance by Morgan to get the win, despite having some negatives. So having a goose egg and a negative. But I still think that Joe Mixon's gonna have to carry this team. Well, Joe Mixon and Devontae Adams are gonna have to carry this team. I don't like the roster construction throughout. I think his tight end, Gesicki he's going to be streaming tight ends. He doesn't have a big advantage at quarterback. And then I think the Fitzpatrick injury makes me move McLaurin down. I have him at 9. I move him up a little bit. I think he's closer to the teams above him than the teams below him.
Yeah, I had Morgan at 9 last week. I have Morgan at 9 this week. So other than one flip spot at 10 and 11, we're the same so far. Like I said last week, kind of an uninspiring team. I kind of agree with that. I think, Devontae and Terry, I think they're pretty safe. I think, Mixon and Jacobs, they could be pretty good this year. Stafford, I think, pretty safe. But the Ronald Jones, I know they said he's starting next week, but the Ronald Jones negative on Thursday night was not what you want to see if you're Morgan.
Yeah. Number 8, I've got him right where I had him last week. I've got Zach. You got the loss. I wanted to move him up, but I can't move him up after a loss, so I'm going to leave him at 8.
We're just way too similar. I moved Zach down from 7 to 8. I guess I was a little higher on his receivers than you were, and then his receivers, I didn't. They didn't have great performances, and his running backs really didn't. And I do still like Zeke for this year. I'm getting a little bit concerned about Antonio Gibson, and then I think Chubb's fine, but the rest of his team, I don't really like Herbert. So I think he could be a playoff team, but I'll keep him at 8. I would have him slightly out of the playoffs right now.
Yeah, and then at 7, I've got Dan. So I dropped him down a spot from last week after the loss. Based on your reaction, you may agree with me. Dan at 7. Got some questions about the running backs. That's the reasoning.
Yeah. So like with Dan, I agree. I have him at 7. I'm not concerned about the running backs. I think Kamara and Derrick Henry will both be fine. I think Russ would probably be the reason that I put him ahead of Zach, and then the receivers are what they are. But if he can patch it together all season, I just trust his running backs more than I trust Zach. So that's why I have him and Russ over Herbert. That's why I have him higher.
Fair enough. At number 6, I have Grant. And I think we feel similarly about his team. Got some questions about Saquon. His depth's a little bit better, and Kelsey and Dak are elite options. So that's why I've got him a little bit ahead of Grant.
Yeah, I think this will be our last agreement. I think we'll be a little bit different in our top 5, but I also have Grant. Saquon, big concern, but just that Kelsey and Dak, it's kind of like you with. I mean, it's not a stack, but I think it's kind of like you with Mahomes and Hill. Like you can just rely on those 2 guys every week. Like you're gonna get really good performance out of them every week, and so he's and then Mike Evans will have a better week. DK is good, so yeah, I think Grant still at 6 for me.
And then at number 5, I have myself. So maybe kind of a questionable thing to move myself down after a big week. But I think that the Jerry Jeudy injury makes me concerned because now I have no depth any longer. And then I think that the big Tyreek Hill to Patrick Mahomes touchdown obviously is great and gives me 20 points, but there's only so many of those a season, so maybe 1 or 2 left. But I could have saved one for another week when closer matchup. So I got myself at 5.
Okay. I have Hunter at 5, and it's not really a punishment for his bad week because, like we said, I think his team will be fine. It's more a reward for Thomas for having a really good week. But I think his receiver or his running backs, I am I'm a little bit more encouraged by than I was last week. But I think I talked about last week not liking his receiver options. I know he has a lot of them, but I just don't love him. And it's tough when you have so many and that are kind of in that similar range that you have to make those decisions every week. And Hunter made the wrong ones this week. It's just it can be tough. So I still think his team's good, and I still think he'll be a playoff team, even starting on one. So I have Hunter at 5.
I have him at 4. So big drop. I had him at 1 last week. Obviously, moved him down 3 spots. Like you said, I think that this kind of maybe exposed some of his weaknesses a little bit. And then with concerns about Ayuk, I think his receivers are a little bit more questionable than I thought. I still really like his running back depth. I liked it last week, even though none of those were top options. And if Trey Sermon steps up, he's going to be right back up near the top of my rankings. But I'm at 4 for this week.
Yeah. I've been going back and forth when I was writing this between doing you and Haney. I think I'll do Haney because at 4 because Melvin had a really long touchdown. I just don't know if that's sustainable. He and Javonte Williams basically evenly split work. He just ended up getting the long touchdown. I think the Jamar performance is very encouraging. So that would be the big thing for him. But is DeAndre Swift going to get all that passing work with that was kind of a ridiculous game with so much garbage time offense they had. I think you brought that up yesterday. So yeah, I still really like Andy's team, and I really like his receivers, even though they didn't have the best games. Like I still think they're really like safe options, and I still think he's a safe playoff team. I just kind of after that first flex spot, I just don't know about his depth.
Yeah, I had him at 3. I agree with you. I think you hit the nail on the head. The Jamar Chase game is extremely encouraging for him. I don't like his depth, but I think the starting lineup's so good. I'm really high on Kyler this year. So I feel good about Haney at 3. And I think he backed it up with a big performance week 1.
Okay, I have you at 3. I do think the Gus injury definitely hurts. The Judy injury, I think it hurts less. I mean, Judy's fine. I think he's a fine flex play, but I don't think that's like a season killer or anything. But Miles Sanders had a pretty good game. That's encouraging. I was pretty low on him going into the year. And Aaron Jones is going to be better. And then really I have you at 3 because like Mahomes and Tyreek is just like it's just absurd. And it's just like I mean, it's so lethal and it's always concerning for your opponent. And it's so high upside that you were able, despite some subpar performances, you were still able to put up 157 points because of those 2 guys.
Yeah, I mean, I would have myself near the top if I still had Gus. I'd have myself, up 1, 2, or 3 for sure. But losing Gus, I think, is a big loss. It hurts my feelings more than anything. So that's why I think my ceiling is a little bit lower. But maybe I'm being a little hard on myself. I've got Nick at number 2. I was pretty close between Nick and Thomas, but I do agree with you. His wide receiver combination is just ridiculous. The upside on those guys is outrageous, and now I get to Tyson Williams, who looked very good, although Murray came in the second half. I thought Williams looked better, so I feel really good about Nick's team. I have him up 3 spots to number 2.
Yeah, I guess we have the same top 2. I moved him down to 2. It's not really a punishment either. It's just I think I had like a really good week, and so yeah, I would say the Tyson thing is really encouraging. He looked really good. I'm the only thing that you would maybe be concerned about is they signed so many backs. They signed Latavius, they signed Le'Veon, like they signed so many guys that like maybe they want to split the carries, going forward. And then Damian Harris fumbled, like a Belichick running back fumbled. That's always kind of concerning. Javonte Williams splitting carries. So his running back situation, I think it could be good. It's still a little bit of a question mark. His receiver is obviously really good. Brady had a really good Thursday night game.
Did the Ravens sign Devontae Freeman too?
Yeah, and Devontae Freeman. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I knew there was one other I was forgetting. So yeah, I still think next team is really good, but I do think my team is a little bit better right now.
Yeah, and so I agree. We got the same team at the top. We both have you at number 1. I just am very high on Jalen Hurts. I guess we'll have to see how he does against a real defense this week. But the way that Hurts and Montgomery looked, I think answered all the questions we had. Scored 160 points. I don't think there's really any argument. I had you by far. as my number one team.
Okay. I was a little closer with Nick, though, but I do agree I'm number one. I would agree. David Montgomery is the most encouraging thing. James Robinson, a little bit concerning, but they are going to be in bad. They are going to be down a lot this year, and he is kind of their pass catching running back between him and Carlos Hyde. So I would imagine he gets more usage as the season goes on. And my receivers were Amari Cooper and Tyler Lockett. We know are capable of huge games, and so if I can just get those at the right weeks, I think my team is in really really good shape. And TJ Hawkinson, I really was encouraged by his performance.
All right. Well, it looks like another hour-long podcast. We're only halfway through now. We'll play the interview with Grant that we recorded later. So sorry about that. I guess this is just what it's going to be, to be honest. There are a couple of extra points that I forgot to include when we were previewing the games with Grant. But some milestones that are on tap for week 2. We got Ben needs 63.88 points to get to 12,000. He'd be the 8th to that mark. Morgan needs 126 to get to 12,000. So both of them could reach that this week. Nick's next win will be his 65th. That'll be the 7th team to do so. Thomas's next win will be his 50th. He'll be the 11th to do so. And his next loss will make him the first to 85 losses. So one of those is going to happen this week. Hunter needs one 100-point game to get his 50th. I need one 125-point game to become the first team to have 20 of those. Colin will play his 130th game this week. That makes him the 10th team to do that. And Morgan will play his 135th game this week, making him the 8th team to do that. And then real quick, run through the matchups. I'm 6-4 all time against Nick, but he's won 4 of the last 5. Colin is 6-3 against Thomas. Zach is 8-2 all time against Ben, and Zach is also 5-2 all time in week 2, while Ben's 3-7. So the analytics point towards Zach in that matchup. Grant is 6-4 against Morgan. Hunter is 9-5 against Joe, and that's actually your worst opponent, I believe, Joe.
Well, he used to be like 9-2 against me or something like that.
Yeah, you've got a few wins in recent years. And then Dan is 4-2 against Austin. And another analytics matchup there. Dan is 4-2 against Austin, and Dan is also 8-2 in week 2, and Austin is 1-4 in week 2. So those are all the records against each other for these upcoming matchups. And now up next, we will have an interview with the 2-time reigning champion. All right, so we are joined now by our first ever guest. And so we figured our first guest should be the 2-time defending champion. So we have Grant on the podcast today. And Joe has some questions for him. So Joe, you can go ahead.
Well, basically my big question with him going into the draft, just being defending back-to-back champion, was, knowing a couple years ago when I was defending my championship, like how big of a priority was it to kind of recreate your strategy from last year? Like, you got Kelsey again, you have a really good quarterback again, you have, in theory, a high-end RB1 with Saquon like you did with Dalvin last year. Like, was that like something you were trying to focus on?
So last year, I think people were just more hesitant to spend their money, and so I got like what it was like Michael Thomas, Dalvin Cook, and Kelsey like in the first like 10 picks, whatever it was. Like, I was out like early, and then this year I just felt like I wasn't like targeting Saquon by any means, but I was going after a number 1 running back, but I just felt like they were all going like so high prices that it didn't quite work out the same way. But that was kind of my strategy again, though, was just kind of like spend money big, try to get big name people, and then fill out the rest of my roster later with the waiver wire. That's kind of how I've approached the auction.
Getting Dak for $1 was a strong play.
Yeah. Well, normally I have like the late round quarterbacks I need. Like I like going the late round quarterback route, but it wasn't necessarily a late round quarterback, but he went for the same kind of value. So
yeah, that made me want to blow my brains out. And then like really the only other thing is we obviously made a trade last year, probably won you the championship, probably cost me a shot at it. How active are you looking at other teams, seeing what trades you could possibly make to improve your team?
I haven't really started looking at trades yet. I was really start looking. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on the season and what's going on and stuff and what my record is and how I feel about my team. But generally I don't start really trying to trade till like week 3 or 4 because I feel like post draft, like 1 week after the draft, you're basically still don't really know anything.
Mhm.
Yeah, everyone likes
So-
the draft.
Yeah. And also like I just you got to see what your team actually needs before you start moving pieces that you because like I mean I went like if you go hard at the beginning and you have less depth, then if you only have a couple moves to make, you don't want to blow it getting a wide receiver that you don't really need when you could be using a running back or whatever.
Yeah, I think besides me, you probably make the most trades. In fact, you might make more trades than me. I'm trying to go back and look. Because you
Yeah, I'm generally pretty active. And I think I'm just more willing to like, I don't want to say that I just accept anything, but like I'm more willing to just to take risk and take chances on stuff.
Yeah, we definitely have people that are like more hesitant to trade, and you're definitely on the more willing side, I would say.
Yeah.
I got a good question. My question is, what is your strategy? Because when it's Sunday, I sit down and watch TV all day and just absolutely go ballistic at my team, blowing it every week. So are you a guy who like watches all the games and just gets really anxious about it, or do you just like ignore it?
No, honestly, I don't really watch many of the games.
I think that's the move.
I will maybe watch like 1 or 2 games. Especially if I'm like hanging out with people, but most of the time if I watch a game, it's like on a side stream while I'm doing something else. I never like, it's very rarely like an active watch for me. I mainly just look at the numbers and and that's how I enjoy it. Yeah.
That's smart. That's smart. What about if it's like close and you got a guy on Monday Night Football?
Yeah, I'll watch it then. Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people
Yeah,
hate
in
that.
in those cases, yeah, absolutely. But like on Sunday at noon, I'm generally doing other stuff that I
That's what I need to learn. All right. Well, Joe, you have any more questions?
No, that's both mine.
Actually, I do have another question. What is your level of concern about Saquon?
I don't know. I don't think so. Concern. I am concerned that he is not going to be a top 5. I don't believe he's going to be a top 5 running back, but I think he'll eventually figure it out. And but like I just don't think the Giants have the upside offense to make him like really good. He was kind of like I said, like I thought all the other running backs were going really hot, and so he was on the board. He was one of the last top end guys, and he kind of went for cheaper than like some of the other ones.
Value, for sure.
So I just kind of went with that. So I didn't necessarily like love Barkley off the top, but
yeah, I think you're in for like 60 or 62. I don't know. I was gonna ask Joe that too, because like actually this week a whole bunch of the number 1 running backs like Zeke, Aaron Jones, Saquon, a bunch of guys had just really, really bad weeks. And so I was gonna gauge Joe on what his level of concern was on those guys. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I think with a couple of those tough matchups, I think Zeke and Eckler, especially, Aaron Jones too. He got game scripted out, and the Saints have a really good run defense. So I wouldn't freak out about those 3. Saquon, I just didn't love from the start, so I wouldn't be. But the Broncos also have a good defense, so I don't know. I think it's a little bit early after week 1.
yeah, I definitely don't like the fact that Saquon's already missing practice again, and he's got a Thursday night game.
Yeah.
But
I said they're going to ramp him up though as the season goes on, so I guess we'll see.
I'm kind of in the same boat as you though, Grant. I think it's like, that he may not be the number 1 guy, but I think he's talented enough to figure it out, especially as he gets more healthy. So
yeah, so I'll try to just
say-
fill in the gaps until until it happens.
I would say concerned, but not like trying to unload him immediately is a good way to be.
Yeah.
Although you don't want to miss the boat, because last year when Zeke's whole team got hurt around him, I could not trade him for anything and he was garbage. So, but I don't think you're quite there yet. Okay. So let's move on. So this is going to be our recurring segment every week. So we're going to have a new guest on. We'll interview them a little bit, and then they'll preview the next week and pick all the games with us. And so we'll keep a running tally of Joe's record, my record, and the guest picker record, kind of side by side. So Joe and I got a week start, so I guess 1 week we'll have to do 2 guest pickers. But Grant, you could be the first guest picker. So we'll start with let's start with you. So you've got Morgan this week. Looks like right now it is a huge line. So you were favored by 17.2 against Morgan. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is a pretty big line. I was looking at that today, actually. I was like, well, I projected 118. What's going on there? It's it's like Travis Kelce and Dak are both playing like the bottom defense. I mean, I guess it's only 1 week, but they're still like, it was like number 30 defense for the respective positions. And they're both supposed to score a lot.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, I agree. I think your matchups look really good this week. I mean, Saquon's got Washington, which is not a great matchup, but Travis Kelce against Baltimore, who just got shredded by Waller, and then Dak against the Chargers. I think those are really good matchups.
Yeah.
And then Deebo Samuel stepping up big for you too last week. So
absolutely.
I don't know. That's a huge line. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I think I think I like Morgan's team more than yours, or more than you do. And I was interested to see Grant put Fournette in his running back 2 spot. I think that's I think maybe your biggest point of concern. And they announced Ronald Jones is going to be the starter today, I think. So I think that's a lot of points. I completely agree. I would probably take Morgan with the points, but I would probably take Grant to win straight up.
Yeah, I'm gonna take Morgan with the points too. What about you, Grant?
Yeah, I'm gonna take myself.
All right, taking himself to cover 17. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. All right, let's go to Joe. So Joe, you have Hunter this week. Hunter's whose team we liked a lot and didn't exactly come out hot in week 1. So what are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean Hunter I was riding back from his bachelor party with him for the start of the noon games, and he was my team was doing really well and his team was not, and he was not too thrilled with that. And he really just started the wrong receivers. Like it cost him against Morgan. So I still don't I still think he has a good team, and Parker obviously loves his team. He had him at number 1 in his power rankings. But I'll take myself because I'm on an underdog again. My team just performed so well last week, and I think I'm one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the league. My only concern is a little bit worried about James Robinson, but I think the rest of my team is just so good that if you're giving me points, I will definitely take myself straight up and with the points.
Yeah, so the line right now is Hunter minus 2.7. So yeah, Hunter minus a couple. Grant, what do you think?
I probably lean towards Joe. I think I just like, well, so like I like Joe's team a little bit more when I just look at it, but then I'm like, Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey is like very, very good, and they could score 70 by themselves.
Go off.
But I really like Hawkinson. I think he had a really good week, and he was a little bit, maybe not underrated is the right word, but a little bit under the radar. With Waller and Kelce. I have him in my other league, so, and Green Bay is like a pretty decent matchup. So I think I'll take probably Joe, since it's only like a 3-point spread.
All right, I guess I'll go the other way then. I do like Joe's team probably better than Hunter's after week 1, but I think that, like you said, Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, Hunter's never going to be out of a game. Bucs defense going against Atlanta, who looked awful this week, is a better matchup than the 49ers against Philadelphia. Joe's playing against his own quarterback, which, I mean, we haven't done waivers yet, so he may switch out defenses. But just to spice it up, I'll take Hunter.
Yeah, I am worried about Lamar against the Chiefs. That's my big concern.
Yeah, the Chiefs defense looked horrible last week. So,
yeah.
All right, so now we'll move on to me. So I get Nick this week, who obviously I really like Nick's team. I'm a 5.3 point favorite, which seems a little bit steep. I do have some good matchups. Mahomes against Baltimore, Aaron Jones against Detroit, but I think that's kind of baked into the line a little bit. So I'm going to take Nick plus the 5.3.
I'm going to agree. I would say concerning for Nick is Damian Harris fumbled last week. Belichick doesn't really like that. So is that going to affect his workload? But I do like Nick's team slightly more than yours, and so if he's getting points, I think I'll take him. And then I think Mahomes and Tyreek, the Mahomes Tyreek stack, which worked out for you really well week one. You know, they're playing the Ravens with no Marcus Peters. I think that could work out, but I'll still take Nick with the points.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards taking Nick as well. I really like the Broncos versus Jacksonville defense matchup. That's Jacksonville looked pretty damn rough, getting blown out by the Texans. So
starts the Urban Meyer era.
yeah. And then CD Lamb, and so I guess I don't really. CD Lamb had a good week, but then I didn't. I guess Diggs and Ridley didn't have the top end weeks, but I think they might bounce back.
I think Hunter's projections are a little weird. Like Tyson Williams 10 against Kansas City when we just saw them get destroyed on the ground by Cleveland, and then Ridley and Diggs both at 14. Like I think he's got an easy chance to go way above those projections.
Yeah,
take it up with Mike Clay.
Yeah, Mike Clay. I don't know what's going for here. All right, so we all got Nick. Let's move on. Let's look at Thomas versus Colin. So right now, Thomas is a 2.6 point favorite, which I know Joe and I both like Thomas's team, and maybe would expect that line to be a little bit more than it is. But the matchups are okay for Thomas. And then Colin, the matchups, I'm just now looking at him for the first time, but he's got Eckler against Dallas. So obviously, anytime you get your best player going against Dallas, that's a great situation. And then I don't know, they don't really look that great other than that to me. So
Godwin versus Atlanta is good.
Oh yeah, Godwin versus Atlanta. Yeah, that's a great matchup. And then Sutton against Jacksonville, that could work out. Although Sutton didn't look great week one, but I don't really get this line. Thomas minus 2.6. It seems easy to me, so I'm going to go with Thomas.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of boring, but you know, we talked a lot about last week, really liking Thomas' team and not liking Collins. Thomas had a really good week one quietly, I think kind of behind me and you, who had huge weeks. He was very easily third. And I mean, I think Kyle Pitts is only going to get better. I think Keenan Allen has a good matchup. DeAndre Swift gets a lot of passing work. You know, I think Kyler is going to have a really good game with the Vikings. I think it's Thomas. I agree with you. It seems a little bit too easy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to take Thomas as well. Just like looking at each, like I don't get how the line is only 2 points, but if you look at the check marks, like Thomas is winning like every check mark, so there must be
he's just
some big lopside
everywhere.
Yeah, so
yeah,
I'll have to take Thomas as well.
All right, so we're in agreement on the last two picks. I'll let somebody else go first this time, so maybe we can spice things up. Grant, let's look at Ben versus Zach. So obviously both these teams with losses week one need a win here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so let me skim it over real quick. Well, I know Ben lost a couple guys, right, this week, or he lost Mostert, right?
He lost Mostert, yeah.
So, so he was. I mean, I guess he's still got Carson and Gaskin, so that's not a terrible running back depth, even with
the line right now is Zach minus 3.7.
Yeah. Let's see. I'll probably, Zach's got the good running backs that will probably that are probably just due for a regression, right? Like Zeke should score more than 5 points, and Antonio Gibson got a lot of yards, but never in the end zone. So if those two turn around and they both get a touchdown apiece, they'll be looking pretty solid.
You taking Zach?
Yeah, I take Zach.
What about you, Joe?
No, I'll go the other way on this. I think Ben lost Mostert, but the thing about Ben's team, it's really deep, and I think he puts Devontae Smith right in there. Devontae Smith had a really good NFL debut. He's got Deontay Johnson, who we benched last week. He's in a starting lineup, and I think you got Aaron Rodgers against the Lions. You got you got to figure Aaron Rodgers will have a better game than last week. It'd be hard to do worse. And you got Deontay against the Raiders. You got T. Higgins against the Bears secondary. Didn't look very good. Cooper Kupp looked good last week. I'll take Ben with the points. I still with Ben's team, and then obviously Waller last night was like unstoppable. So I think Ben's team, we talked about kind of low upside, but I do still, it's not horrible. And I'm not super high on Zach's team, so I'll take Ben with the points.
I'm gonna have to side with Joe here. I think Ben with the points. I think he's got really good matchups this week. I'm not super high on his team overall, but I think Aaron Rodgers is the revenge tour's got to start at some point. So if it doesn't start this week, then maybe it won't happen. But I like that matchup against Detroit this week. I think his running backs actually both look pretty good in week 1. Obviously, losing Mostert hurts his depth, but I don't think that comes back to bite him here. So I like Ben plus the 3.7. So the last matchup to talk about would be Dan versus Austin. Joe, I'll let you go first on this one. It's Dan as a 5.8 point favorite against Austin, another matchup of teams who need a win.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Dan, his receivers had we were concerned about his receivers. His receivers actually had really good weeks. Derrick Henry did not. That probably cost him against Grant. But I do, so if he can get that production out of his receivers, I know Robbie Anderson just had the one long touchdown catch, but if he can get consistent production out of his receivers, his team's going to be good this year. Austin's team also had a really bad week against me, but I'll take Dan. I just like his team a little bit more. I like Kamara against Carolina and Derrick Henry against Seattle. I think those are two pretty good matchups. And Russell Wilson against the Titans is a good matchup also. I think there will be some points in that game. So I'll take Dan given the points.
Grant?
Yeah. Let's see. I'll probably take Dan as well. Just after going up against this team last week, I was pretty nervous, especially like you said, if Derrick Henry just finds one long run, I'd probably lose the game. So it's like about five points. So I think Dan can win that matchup.
I'm gonna take Austin. Some of it's because y'all picked Dan, but also I think his running backs, didn't come out with fantasy points, but both of them were heavily involved, and both of them get decent matchups this week. So I like that. The two teams coming off Monday Night Football, maybe they can give up some points to the running backs for Austin, and then I think Dan is one of the few teams in the league who's not going to hurt Austin at the two flex positions too bad. So I think his flexes are obviously a huge question mark. Maybe he'll make a play on the waiver wire this week. We'll have to see, but I think that Dan's not going to be in a great position to take advantage of that. I'm assuming Austin's not going to play the Ravens defense against the Chiefs. So I think, we may see this line move a little bit actually in Austin's favor. So I'm going to take advantage of that, and I'm going to take Austin with the points. All right. I should mention, by the way, that Joe was 5-1 last week on his picks, and I was 1-5. So apparently Joe knows what's going on. We'll see how Grant can
Not the
match
pulse
up.
of the league.
All right, but we'll let you go, Grant. Thanks for joining us for the second episode of Are You Ready for a Podcast? And thanks everyone for listening. This will be the end of the podcast for y'all. It's the middle of it for Joe and I. We're recording out of order. But all right, Grant, thanks for coming on, and we'll see you later.
All right. See you, man. Bye.